Welcome back. Okay, we got through another night, and now, given the number of incidents, storms that we've had over the past week, we're facing the most critical one since the events of a week ago Monday. We had significant storms last night, but fortunately they moved to the north. Fortunately for us, unfortunately for the folks up in the Elroy area. We are going to have a rain event this evening, and we have to keep in mind that the event is not to be measured by the amount of rain we get in Madison. It's also going to be, the effect on us will be determined by the rain that also falls to the north and to the west into the watershed in the remainder of Dane County. The level of Lake Mendota is being managed by the county, and they continue to do a remarkable job balancing the lake levels of Mendota and Monona. The locks are operating just fine, and we do not expect any problems other than the volume of rain that may fall in the next 24 hours. We've got up to 5,000 sandbags now filled and ready for distribution. We continue to recommend that people remove valuables from their basements and the lower levels of their homes and businesses. Again, we want to remind folks that they need to remove their cars from low-lying areas, which they can identify on the map on the city website. And there will again be free parking in the ramps between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. through Saturday morning. We have got one lane of inbound John Nolan Drive closed, and that will be closed through Friday, and that'll be in non-peak hours from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We need to stabilize the shore of Lake Monona along the causeway to protect John Nolan Drive and the integrity of the bicycle path. We continue to have the closures we've experienced on Johnson, East Main, along Marston. We want to remind folks, do not go into flooded waters unless you're wearing protective gear, and be prepared for any kind of electrical outages that may occur as a result of the storms. This particular storm that we're facing tonight is one that may have high winds, which again poses the danger of trees being uprooted. Also want you to know that because of these events, I have changed the city's capital budget, and I am recommending the acquisition of a city naval fleet along with necessary armaments. Any questions?
I guess given the amount of rain that's predicted.
That was a joke.
Given the amount of rain that's predicted in this area and in Dane County, what is the city's top concern right now?
Our top concern is flooding in the blue and purple areas as designated on the map on our website, most of which are in the isthmus, some of which trail down in and around Brittingham Bay and the edges of Lake Monona, and up to the north of Avery Avenue towards the airport. Again, our concerns range from flooding, loss of power, and the consequences of uprooted trees, which can be taken out by the root ball in high winds.
Flash flooding also.
And the flash flooding in those areas. And again, people might be surprised. If we have a storm that's very heavy to the north northwest of Madison, but is modest in and around the city. There could be rising waters which seem to be disproportionate from the amount of rain actually falling in the isthmus. But that, again, is the consequence of what happens in the entire watershed.
So there's a lot of flooding up in north of us right now, but that's really, you know,
Wait one sec.
north.
Okay, so we've just got notice of a severe thunderstorm watch. Again, we can't predict how much rain it's going to put into the watershed, but go on, I'm sorry.
The flooding up north of us now, it's Wisconsin Dells, but it's also Sauk County area. Does that, when you say north and west, is it really simply
When I say north and west of Madison, I'm speaking basically of Dane County within the watershed. The storms that hit last night to the counties north and west of us, particularly, as I said earlier, in the region of Elroy, Wisconsin, that flood water will not impact Lake Mendota and Lake Monona.
So I guess given the water levels of the lake, so let's say we get 3 inches of rain tonight or 4 inches of rain, what does that mean for the city?
Again, if the 3 to 4 inches were to fall in the worst areas of what would consequently be the worst areas for the watershed, I would think that we'll end up with some of the same flooding we saw on Tuesday of this past week in the areas of the isthmus and in and around Lake Monona.
So what level of rain would it take for evacuations to have to happen?
Again, it really depends where the rains fall. If it was in the same targeted area as a week ago Monday, 5 inches would certainly do it.
But even the severe rain at this point, we're not concerned about a dam failure.
Keep in mind, we saw 9 to 15 inches of rain from Madison's west side through Middleton out into Cross Plains and Mazomanie. The official measurement at the airport was 4 inches. So within the municipality, within the county, there's great variation as to the amount of rain, and consequently, where it falls is just as important, at least as it affects our watershed.
We got pretty lucky the last couple times it rained. Nothing big had happened. Are you worried that luck will run out?
Well, we can't control the weather. This is the last of the serious rain events that we anticipate since the deluge a week ago Monday. Again, if we can get through the next 24 hours and with little prospect of rain over the next week, we may be out of this, at least in terms of concerns about additional flooding. Obviously, people with storm damage will be dealing with this for quite some time, where you've got over $100 million of public and private property damaged. That is going to take some time to repair.
What is the level of damage right now along like John Nolan and the bike path where some of that erosion prevention control is taking place?
Well, what we're seeing is the high waters are eating away at the shoreline.
Right now, it's precautionary.
Okay.
There really isn't any significant erosion. We're just looking at protecting the shore so it doesn't erode, just to protect the infrastructure we have out there, the bike path and the road itself.
Okay.
Thanks.
There are still some roads closed around Madison though, right?
Yeah, there's still a few roads closed. The main ones that are closed are East Johnson from First to Baldwin, East Main in the area of Northern Court and the Ohio River, Marston between Johnson and Sherman, and the 700-800 blocks of East Mifflin.
A lot of people are still wondering, how can we continue to help? What can they be doing? What can people be doing?
Well, hopefully they've already signed up on the volunteer list, and to continue to do that. The other thing that's really critical, and this is not usually seen in terms of helping, is not to need help yourself. In other words, take the necessary precautions to keep your property and yourself free of any damage or danger. And again, let's repeat. Get the valuables out of the basement. Where appropriate, get sandbags or other equipment in and around your foundation, as well as the basement drain. Have electric lanterns or battery-operated lanterns and flashlights available. Alternative sources of energy. Make sure that your cell phone is always fully charged. And don't go play in the streets.
And Rob, maybe you can explain this a little bit, but we're talking a lot about the watershed. Can you kind of give us a geographical image of how the watershed works, what it looks like?
So the watershed that drains through the isthmus is north of Madison in much of northern Dane County. That drains through the Ohio River at the Tenney Dam into Lake Monona, and then continues out of Lake Monona through the Ohio River, Mud Lake, over to Lake Wabisa. I'm not sure, did you want?
Yeah, because I know at least in our newsroom we're talking a lot about what is the watershed and how does this work and what does it look like, and I think a lot of people might be wondering that as well.
Well, I don't have the area of the watershed in front of me, but it's modest-sized watershed, not huge by any means, but from a local standpoint, a large watershed. And Lake Mendota is able to store water and then release it more slowly. And that has been a very effective means of controlling the flow through the lake and river chain. But in this particular event, the lake levels are high and it keeps raining. And the concern is that the release rate will have to be increased out of the Tenney Dam probably tomorrow. And when that increase occurs, two things I guess to keep in mind. One, don't panic because it's planned. That's part of the lake management plan right now. So when you see it tomorrow, don't panic. And the other thing is the water levels will go up when the water is released. The water levels in the isthmus will go up when the water is released, regardless of the weather that happens to be going on at that particular moment. Does that help?
Yeah, so let me just make sure.
We have maps, don't we? Of the
Yeah, we
watershed?
can certainly provide the maps. Yep.
Okay. And from what you're saying, what's happening tomorrow, people should expect to see their storm drains kind of flood tomorrow, regardless of if it rains.
Yes, that's our expectation right now.
And then when you say they plan to open the watershed, you mean they plan to open the dam up once again?
They intend to let more water out once again. Yep.
From the
That's
dam
correct.
house.
Yes.
Sorry, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I misspoke.
No, you're great. I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah.
What I'm. Okay.
How does high winds impact the flow of the water through the watershed?
Wind isn't a big impact on the flow of the water through the watershed. It's more we start to bring in other concerns like trees falling and that type of thing, electricity being out, and then if there is any street flooding, of course that hampers any kind of response to those emergencies.
High winds can cause shore erosion.
Yep, that's very true. Yep, and that is a concern.
Like along John Island?
Yep, and we are monitoring that situation.
Anything else?
say the worst case scenario happens tonight, in the middle of the night. What are the plans to get people evacuated and where are the shelters?
It depends where the evacuation is necessary, because we won't be able to cross flooded streets. But we know the areas.
The shelters are planned.
Yeah, the shelters are planned. Where people will go, though, determines where they're located and what roadways are open. We've already identified and warned folks if they're in a flood area that might need evacuation. So we just have to activate the plan if that should occur. But again, we're hoping we can avoid the worst case scenario, and we can absorb a couple of inches within the watershed and not have to evacuate.
Are these just left over from Friday, or are they going back out again?
They went out, they first went out Friday, then more of them went out on Monday,
I think even yesterday.
and so, yeah,
That is Monday. I'm losing track.
So to more areas, to different areas?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, we expanded the targeted area from the strip in the isthmus paralleling East Washington Avenue to the south in the area around Brittingham Bay and Monona Bay.
Right now, you guys just feel like you're in sort of a waiting game.
We just want the clock to run out and the rains not to come.
It's not a waiting game. We are continuing to prepare.
All right? Okay, tomorrow we estimate 11 o'clock?
11.
Yeah, we'll do this at 11 a.m. and hopefully maybe that'll be the last in this series of family gatherings that we're having here. Okay?
Expect to see the naval budget in the 2019 announcement.
There you go. Thank you.